think you know Adolf Hitler. You've never seen him like this before. Hitler's contemporaries, from his birth in Braunau to his death in the bunker, authentically flesh out the picture. Who was Hitler? Hitler neither finished school nor had any vocational training. He occasionally lived in homeless shelters or on the street. He refused to pursue a regular job. To this day, it seems inexplicable that he could come to power. Out of nowhere, Hitler became the Führer, leader of the German Reich, one of the most powerful men of the 20th century, starting an inferno that engulfed the world and brought death to millions of people. The nation worshipped him and followed him blindly into the abyss. But during his lifetime, he kept his origins and his life secret. No one should know how or who he was. Fascinating and oppressive accounts from companions, friends, and enemies, as well as the most extensive collection of archive material ever shown. Much of it, hitherto unpublished, reveal who Hitler was and how he could become what he was. A notorious liar and an unscrupulous murderer. Under the protection of the Hitler-Stalin Pact, Hitler invades Poland. Great Britain and France immediately declare war on Germany. Despite all the warnings, this comes as a surprise for Hitler. He is unsure of himself, but the rapid occupation of Poland restores his self-confidence. The continuing passivity of the Western Allies encourages him to go further. After the occupations of Denmark and Norway, he invades the Netherlands, Belgium, and France. Great Britain is stunned. The British army is defeated and has to flee head over heels via Dunkirk. Hitler's confidence rises to immeasurable heights, but his next steps will have fatal consequences.
Führer spoke at length and in detail about the ongoing incorporation of the former provinces of Posen and West Prussia. The social strata thought to be racially valuable could be Germanized. In principle, they would have to look racially pure and have the right hereditary disposition. A special cultural heritage group would be created. Here, language would be the most important factor. He said he wasn't interested in the Polish intelligentsia, as they were the supporters of Polish nationalism. Gerhard Engel, army adjutant to Hitler, memoirs in diary form.
Heinrich Himmler's pocket diary. Berlin, office, post-briefing, 13 minutes. 11 a.m., leave for Plock. 1 p.m., land in Plock, drive to Mlawa. Dinner and overnight stay there. Rudolf Brandt, SS Colonel.
The Poles are not a people to form a state. I traveled back and forth across the country with the Reichsführer SS. A country with so little idea of the essence of settlement has no claim to independent power in the European sphere. It is a colonial country. Hans Jost, writer, president of the Reich Literature Chamber.
If a German passed by, a Pole had to step off the sidewalk. A Pole could not travel by automobile or trolley and was even forbidden to own a bicycle. He had been placed completely outside protection of the law. And all his property, movable or immovable, was at the disposal of the German authorities. Jan Karski, courier of the Polish underground.
Diary, Tuesday, April the 9th, 1940. Nasty weather. Housework and errands in the morning. Learn that the Germans have marched into Denmark and Norway. God knows what comes next. Otto Blumenthal, Jewish-German mathematician, in exile, Uitzulen, near Utrecht.
After the war, we'll have to ask the English how they could claim on a daily basis to rule the waves when Germany was able to land troops in 6 different places in Norway. Friedrich Kellner, court employee, Laubach.
Diary, Wednesday, April the 10th, 1940. Contradictory news from Norway. Naval battle at Narvik. Otto Blumenthal.
After the surrender of Norway on June the 10th, 1940, the German Army, Navy and Air Force stationed up to 400,000 servicemen in this country with less than 3.5 million inhabitants. The Norwegians are forced to supply whatever the occupiers need. In a race against the British, Norway has been occupied for economic reasons and because the German Navy wants to control the Norwegian coastline to prevent a British blockade. From 1942 onwards, the German army divisions are not particularly strong. Above all, they are used to secure the supply of Swedish iron ore via the port of Narvik against an Allied invasion.
From all this wreckage and confusion, there emerged one fact of major importance potentially affecting the whole future of the war. In their desperate grapple with the British Navy, the Germans ruined their own, such as it was, for the impending climax. Winston Churchill, the Second World War.
Diary, April the 11th, 1940. Visited Saarbrücken, the Spiechener Heights. The bullet-ridden villages of no man's land. Abandoned old French trenches with mattresses and blankets. Endless bunker construction. Houses in the village, piles of rubble. Hanging walls full of holes. If one day the whole West looked like this, it would be horrible. Alfred Rosenberg, Director of the Foreign Policy Office of the NSDAP.
I tried to read in the faces of the thousands what was in their minds this Easter day. But their faces looked blank. Obviously, they do not like the war, but they will do what they're told. Die, for instance. William Shira, reporter for Columbia Broadcasting System.
At lunchtime on May the 9th, we left Berlin in great secrecy and travelled at first light towards Hamburg, turned the train around and arrived in Aachen at 3 a.m. Under a beautiful starry sky, we went by car to the command post of the Führer's headquarters, the Felsennest or Rocky Eyrie. Wilhelm Keitel, Supreme High Commander of the Armed Forces, Memoirs.
Hitler gathered his small executive staff and announced in a firm, clear voice that the offensive against France had begun that morning. The first birds were chirping in the dewy bushes, and in the distance, we could hear the thunder of artillery. Christa Schröder, Hitler's private secretary.
On May the 10th, 1940, the opponent mounted a big offensive. 10 tank and 6 motorized divisions rolled towards the west in 2 groups. On the downward slope to which we had been mistakenly led, our army, the government, and the whole of France now plunged with dizzying speed to its ruin. And yet there were 3,000 modern French tanks and 800 machine guns mounted on trucks. The Germans didn't have more than that either. Charles de Gaulle, Tank Division Commander, Memoirs.
Diary, May the 10th, 1940. The final battle is beginning and will decide the fate of Germany, probably forever, definitely for centuries. The Dutch have now been agitating against us for 7 years and have let in all immigrants. They were just interested in doing business and were bosom friends to all the Jews in the world. Alfred Rosenberg.
In the first Armed Forces report at noon on May the 10th, I had recorded the sentence, "The Führer has personally taken over supreme command of the German army operating in the West." I wrestled with him for half an hour over the approval of this publication. He declared he wanted to remain anonymous and not diminish the glory for the generals. I did not let up, and in the end he gave in. Wilhelm Keitel.
Transcript of talks between Admiral Darlan and the Führer at Obersalzberg. The Führer emphasized that he didn't have the ambition to become a great commander, but more importantly to protect the cultural and social rise of the German nation as the Führer of its people. Others had insisted he become commander.
He was the revolutionary spirit and the pulsating element of the German army and its great organizational machinery. He knew its tendency to exaggerated thoroughness, against which he tirelessly fought. Otto Dietrich, head of press of the NSDAP.
Hitler took the credit for the success of the Western campaign. Albert Speer.
The Western campaign of 1940 revealed another of Hitler's character traits. He was very bold in the creation of his plans. Norway was a courageous plan. The tank breakthrough equally so. But when the first difficulties arose, in contrast to his unshakable persistence in the face of political difficulties, he would vacillate in military questions because he instinctively sensed his lack of ability in this field. Heinz Guderian, Lieutenant General, Armored Corps.
Diary, Friday, May the 10th, 1940. Now the war has really begun. Chamberlain has stepped down and Churchill replaced him. One bad person has left and a much worse one has come. Henrietta Schneider, housekeeper, East Prussia.
Thus, then, on the night of the 10th of May, at the outset of this mighty battle, I acquired the chief power in the state. I cannot conceal that I was conscious of a profound sense of relief. I felt as if I were walking with destiny, and that all my past life had been but a preparation for this hour and for this trial. Winston Churchill.
Diary, Saturday, May the 11th, 1940. If I had to spend my whole life with a man, I would choose Mr. Chamberlain. But I think if there was a storm and I was shipwrecked, I would sooner have Mr. Churchill. He has a funny face, like a bulldog in our street. Nella Last, Barrow-in-Furness, Lancashire.
Winston is a dictator. He cannot be overruled, and his colleagues fear him. The people have set him up as something little less than God, and his power is therefore terrific. Robert Menzies, Prime Minister of Australia, from 1939 to 1941.
Diary, Tuesday, May the 21st, 1940. Our armies are 130 kilometers from Paris. We've reached the Channel. Henrietta Schneider.
The English are an amazing nation, and I think it is true that nothing becomes them like catastrophe. When they are really up against it, their negative qualities turn positive in a glorious somersault. Slowness, understatement, complacency change into endurance and pride, the begetter of self-discipline. Martha Gellhorn, war correspondent of the US Army.
The well-trained English army appears to be finished for the most part. One would do well to have a small flask of morphine handy. One might need it. Stefan Zweig, Austrian writer, in exile, Bath, England.
May the 23rd, 1940. We've done it. The Air Force is destroying the English on the beach. I was able to persuade Hitler to stop the army. The Führer wants this to be a lesson for them. Hans Jeschonek, Chief of the General Staff of the Air Force to Erhard Milch, State Secretary of the Aviation Ministry.
Diary. Friday, May the 24th, 1940. The ring is tightening around the enemy armies in northern France. Henrietta Schneider.
May the 26th, 1940, Dunkirk. By order of the very highest level, the tank and motorized units are standing on the heights and are not allowed to attack. There is an understandable nervousness on the part of the commander-in-chief of the army, because waiting for orders from on high when the back of the enemy is open to attack is incomprehensible. Franz Halder, Chief of the General Staff of the Army.
Memoirs in diary form, May the 27th, 1940. The Field Marshal landed. Discussion with the Führer. Göring announced success in Dunkirk harbor, saying,
"Only trawlers are coming across. I hope the Tommies are good swimmers."
Gerhard Engel, Army Adjutant to Hitler.
The British Army? I saw 6 or 7 dead Negroes and maybe 20 or 30 other dead. The mass of the British Army got to the other side unharmed. They left their weapons behind and escaped. Erhard Milch, General of Aviators, to Hermann Göring.
Diary, June the 8th, 1940. I anticipate that Italy will come in now. It is a hard time for all who care for freedom. Neville Chamberlain, Lord President of the Council.
Fascist Italy does not participate in the war against Poland or Western and Northern Europe, but Mussolini wants to benefit from Hitler's victories and get a share of fame and booty. On June the 10th, 1940, Benito Mussolini declares war on France and Britain.
Italians. At that memorable meeting in Berlin, I said that if someone has a friend, he marches with him to the end, according to the laws of fascist morality. And that is what we have done with Germany, with its people, with its victorious armed forces.
Diary, Friday, June the 11th, 1940. And what is the secret of this victory? Surely the immense dynamism of the Führer. Eduard Wagner, Artillery General.
Diary, Friday, June the 14th, 1940. News at 1 o'clock at night. Paris occupied by our troops without a fight. Flag raised for 3 days. Henrietta Schneider.
Letter to William S. Slam, Courier, Portugal, end of June 1940. It was confirmed everywhere that the surrender of Paris had been a demoralizing factor. From that day on, according to one officer, the Germans couldn't advance as fast as the French fled. Friedrich Thorber, born 1908 as Friedrich Ephraim Cantor Berg, Austro-Czech writer.
Adam Cherniakov, head of the Jewish Council of the Warsaw Ghetto. Diary, June the 17th, 1940. Jews will be evicted from public housing. Rumors yesterday that all of France has collapsed.
France offered a ceasefire on June the 17th. I've never seen Hitler as happy as on that day. Heinz Linger, valet to Adolf Hitler.
France's peace offer was submitted to him while he stood surrounded by his officers. He slapped his thigh in a lively gesture. We were to one side and observed the scene that Walter Franz also filmed. Christa Schröder, he was my boss.
Heinrich Hoffmann. Keitel, who was carried away by an outburst of emotion, coined the fatal phrase,
My Führer, you are the greatest military commander of all time.
Part of Hitler's growing self-deification after the first military successes involved believing it himself. Franz Halder.
Charles de Gaulle radio broadcast on the BBC to France, June the 18th, 1940. Is defeat final? No, for France is not alone. She is not alone. She has a vast empire behind her. She can align with the British Empire that holds the sea and continue the fight. She can, like England, use without limit the immense industry of the United States. I say this is not a Franco-German war to be decided by a single battle. I, General de Gaulle, currently in London, invite officers and French soldiers who are located in British territory to put themselves in contact with me. Whatever happens, the flame of the French resistance must not be extinguished and will not be extinguished.
In the Western Campaign, 50,000 soldiers of the German army die. More than 1.2 million soldiers from France, Great Britain, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Belgium are captured.
Memoirs in diary form, June the 20th, 1914. Führer insisted that Breker and other artists and town planners come to the Führer headquarters. Even if those concerned don't understand questions of warfare and politics, they are still essential for the development of German art. Gerhard Engel.
June the 23rd, 1940. Hitler sheds light on my reason for being here.
I intend to drive to Paris with you, Speer, and Giesler.
A motorcade is waiting for us. Hitler sits next to the chauffeur in the first open car. I'm behind him. Next to me, Speer and Giesler. Paris is deserted. Dead. Not a soul in sight. This morbid impression seems to depress Hitler as well. Speechless, cramped, he cowers in his seat until we stop at the steps of the opera. Arno Breker, sculptor and architect.
It was my life's dream to see Paris. I can't tell you how happy I am that it has been fulfilled today.
For a moment, I felt sorry for him. 3 hours in Paris, the last and only time, made him happy, as if he was at the height of his success. Albert Speer.
Letter to Elizabeth Wagner, June the 29th, 1940. Yesterday I was in Paris. The city is coming alive again, if only a little, but it's something. It really is a magical place. The Führer was in Paris incognito the day before yesterday at 5 a.m. with Speer. I think he'll tear down Berlin after his impressions of this city. Eduard Wagner.
Eva Braun, who never appears in public, films the arrival of Adolf Hitler and his entourage in Berlin from a window of the Reich Chancellery. A large crowd of hundreds of thousands have waited for the Führer for 6 hours to give him an overwhelming reception.
Hitler was at the height of his power. He was the master of Europe. Gustav Mannerheim, Field Marshal of Finland.
Resistance to Hitler lost considerable ground in May and June 1940. Hitler's prestige had risen further. Ernst von Weizsäcker, State Secretary of the Foreign Ministry.
The mood at home also changed. The initial anxiety was replaced by radiant self-confidence. When the victory fanfare rang out, even old opponents of Hitler could not hide their joy. I also began to believe in the good outcome of the war. Lutz Graf Schwerin von Krosigk, Finance Minister.
The Hitler mystique was beyond analyzing. There was magic about the man. The gods or lot must have been totalitarian, for they or it loved this man. He never lost. He was predestined to win, or so it seemed. Howard K. Smith, correspondent of CBS in Berlin, 1940 to 1941.
Valley M., schoolgirl, Frankfurt am Main. One evening a week, we were allowed to listen to the German Army Request Program. We always looked forward to this, and our favorite songs were Lili Marleen and the Lullaby from Annelie. But we also listened to Bomben auf England.
The Atlantic coast, from the North Cape to the Spanish border, was in the hands of the Germans. The British Army was defeated and had fled the mainland with no weapons. The airspace on the continent was under German control. An invasion of Great Britain seemed under preparation. Ernst von Weizsäcker.
There were frequent visits by leading dignitaries. The Japanese always brought the most wonderful gifts. I can remember once there was a really old sea chart on which one could see how to walk from the mainland to Great Britain without getting one's feet wet. Rohush Mish, SS Bodyguard Regiment.
A stay of a few days in the English capital was all that was needed to recognize the difference between London and Paris. Here, no one was considering capitulation. Julius Deutsch, Austrian socialist of Jewish descent, in exile. Memoirs.
It was only after France had been flattened out that Britain, thanks to her island advantage, developed out of the pangs of defeat and the menace of annihilation a national resolve equal to that of Germany. Winston Churchill.
Diary, Saturday, July the 20th, 1940. Hitler spoke in the Reichstag, made an offer of peace to England. Henrietta Schneider.
Diary, August the 20th, 1940. Winston gave a great speech in the House of Commons. He speaks excellently. He does not brag too much. Harold Nicholson, Member of Parliament, National Labour Party.
The gratitude of every home in our island, in our empire, and indeed throughout the world, except in the abodes of the guilty, goes out to the British airmen who, undaunted by odds, unwearied in their constant challenge and mortal danger, are turning the tide of the world war by their prowess and by their devotion. Never, in the field of human conflict, was so much owed by so many to so few. Winston Churchill.
On August the 24th, 1940, the first bombs fall on London. Despite the fact that German bomber forces are 10 times larger and Allied planes have to fly 6 times further, Winston Churchill orders the immediate bombing of Berlin. On the night of August the 25th, 81 English bombers start out, 29 of which reach their target. More night raids follow. The attacks do not fail to have an effect on Hitler. On September the 4th, he announces his intention to wipe out London. As Goering's Air Force concentrates its bombing raids on the capital, the English aerial defences have a chance to catch their breath.
We had our first big air raid of the war last night. The Berliners were stunned. They did not think it could happen. When this war began, Goering assured them that it couldn't. The Berliners are a naive and simple people. William Shirer, U.S. journalist.
Basic training for men born in 1923 at the Fighter Squadron of Air Regiment 2 in Klagenfurt in Carinthia. Carinthia is a Reichsgau in Austria, which is now called Ostmark in the Greater German Reich. More than 1.3 million of the Austrian male population of approximately 7 million are drafted into the Wehrmacht and the Waffen-SS between 1939 and 1945. 242,000 Austrians are killed in action. That is about 8% of the male population, while in the Old Reich it is more than 30%. The governments of Canada, Australia, New Zealand and South Africa formally request that the royal family, or at least the 2 young princesses, be brought to safety in order to protect the crown, regardless of the fate of the motherland.
The children won't go without me, I won't leave without the king, and the king will never leave. Queen Elizabeth, Queen Consort of King George VI.
There is a time to live and a time to die. Winston Churchill.
Memoirs in diary form, November the 4th, 1940, Reich Chancellery. An unpleasant meeting at headquarters attended by Goering, von Brauchitsch, Keitel. Due to English and other press reports, Führer for the first time doubts the successes of the Luftwaffe and the strike figures. Führer visibly depressed. Have the impression that he doesn't know how to proceed. Gerhard Engel.
The gent has taken off his clothes and put on his bathing suit, but the water is getting colder, and there is an autumn nip in the air. Winston Churchill.
The day after Italy's declaration of war, the 7th British Tank Division was transferred to the Libyan frontier. We were not exactly the most modern force on Earth. Some of our armored cars were old Rolls-Royce Silver Ghosts, used by Lawrence of Arabia in the First World War. But we quickly took one border post after another. Dennis Avey, Private, 2nd Rifle Battalion. November the 17th, 1940. We gathered close to the Libyan frontier, 40 miles south of the sea, in a forbidding but now familiar landscape of sand and gravel. At 0600 hours the next morning, November the 18th, we cut through the wire and set off. All around, we could see tanks and other vehicles streaming across the desert towards Tobruk. Dennis Avey.
On December the 10th, the Italians suffered a severe defeat in Africa at Sidi Barrani. Marshal Graziani begged for German air support. Mussolini considered asking the Germans to send 2 tank divisions to Libya. German troops under Rommel got the situation under control. Heinz Guderian.
But now a new figure sprang upon the world stage. Rommel took charge of the growing German contingent. He strove immediately to enforce an offensive campaign. His ardor and daring inflicted grievous disasters upon us. But he deserves the salute which I made him in the House of Commons in January 1942, when I said of him, "We have a very daring and skillful opponent against us, and, may I say, across the havoc of war, a great general." Winston Churchill.
The next day, November the 20th, we buried my friend, Bill Manley. Dear old Bill. It was towards first light when we buried him. I got on my knees, pulled as much sift sand away as I could, trying to prevent it trickling back into the shallow grave. We removed 1/2 of the dog tag from around his neck and dropped him into a shallow dent in the desert. I tried not to look at his face as I pushed the sand back over him. I left him somewhere in the shifting sands, south of Sidi Rezé. Dennis Avey.
Diary Berlin, December 1st, 1940. For most Germans, this is an end in itself. For to be strong in their scheme of life is to be all. It is the emergence of the primitive tribal instinct of the early German pagans, of the vast forests of the north, to whom brute strength was not only the means, but the end of life. It is this primitive racial instinct of blood and soil which the Nazis have reawakened in the German soul. William Shirer.
Paris in November 1940. The defeat of France leads to a partition of the country under the Armistice of Compiègne, the German garrison headquarters on Place de l'Opéra. Under the German occupation, the Parisian cityscape changes. The German soldiers have their own cinemas, cafes, and about 60 brothels. The Guard Regiment marches along the Champs-Élysées to the garrison headquarters. Northern France, Paris, and the entire Atlantic coast are subject to a German occupying regime. From July 1940, the south, over 40% of France, and the colonies are managed by a new French government based in Vichy, which pursues a course of limited collaboration with the Germans.
The Führer and the Supreme Commander of the German Army, the Führer headquarters, absolutely top secret, for officers only, 9 copies, second copy, order number 21, Operation Barbarossa. Even before the end of the war against England, the German army has to be prepared to overthrow Soviet Russia in a quick campaign, Operation Barbarossa. The bulk of the Russian army in Western Russia should be destroyed in bold operations via tank pincer movements in order to prevent the withdrawal of strong combat units into the expanses of the Russian interior. Adolf Hitler.
Memoirs in diary form, December the 18th, 1940. The order for Barbarossa has been issued. The Army Supreme Commander has ordered us to find out whether the Führer wants armed engagement or is just bluffing. In my opinion, Führer himself still doesn't know how to proceed. He hopes the English will capitulate and doesn't believe the USA will enter the war. Gerhard Engel.
In September 1939, the Wehrmacht and the Red Army determined the line of the border in occupied eastern Poland on the basis of the Hitler-Stalin Pact. Stalin's Soviet Union strictly adheres to the agreement and supplies raw materials to the German Reich. In the next 1.5 years, there will be no conflict along the now 2,000-kilometer-long border.
Diary, Wednesday, January the 1st, 1941. We heard the Führer's message to the German people on the radio, wonderful and full of confidence in victory. Willem Zig also came, and we ended up playing a cosy game of skat. Henrietta Schneider.
On February the 18th, 1941, we drove from Berchtesgaden to Hitler's house on Obersalzberg. Hitler greeted us in the entrance hall with the tree of Untersberg. Here, Hitler spoke. For 1.25 hours, he gave a summary of the development of the armored tank. He concluded his talk about tank characteristics by saying, "Was most important? Armament second most important, and armor a distant third." His opinion, in a nutshell, was,
the tank is not an insurance policy.
Walter Roland, industrialist, Commissioner for Tank Production in Ministry of Armaments and War Production.
At the beginning of April 1941, the motorized flak regiments 19 from Kitzingen and 6 from Hamburg were relocated from France and Belgium to Bulgaria. In the foothills of the Rila and Pirin mountains, watched by Bulgarian troops, a football match between the regiment's first batteries takes place. Tsar Boris III visits the troops. 6 weeks earlier, the Kingdom of Bulgaria joined the Axis Pact of Germany, Italy and Japan, and the Wehrmacht was allowed to station its forces in the Balkan state. Bulgaria will take part in the war against Yugoslavia and Greece, but never declares war on the Soviet Union in the Second World War.
Hitler regards the Serbs as the most effective at nation-building and thus the most dangerous people in the Balkans. Milovan Djilas, Yugoslavian communist from Montenegro. Memoirs.
Diary, April the 5th, 1941. Very early on Saturday morning, the attack on Yugoslavia and Greece is to begin. In Greece, we will try to reach Thessaloniki as quickly as possible. Yugoslavia will also be attacked by Bulgaria and Hungary. The state will be broken up. Italy will be given the coast, Bulgaria, Macedonia, and our Bavarian Eastern March areas are to receive the former Austrian provinces. Josef Goebbels.
Germany declares war on Yugoslavia. Similarities to statements made before the invasions of Poland, Norway, Belgium and Holland. The German troops have been ordered to restore order in the Balkans, said Hitler. The Serbs will offer resistance, but for how long? At the moment, the Wehrmacht is attacking Yugoslavia and Greece. Details are not known, but we should have further news by tonight. Michael Sebastian, Romanian Jewish journalist.
Weather as yesterday, a little cloudier at lunchtime and still cold. Thessaloniki occupied by the Germans. Otto Blumenthal.
Diary. Easter Monday, April the 14th, 1941. The position in Libya becomes worse, and Egypt is threatened. In the Balkans, the Yugoslavs are going to collapse, and as the Greeks have not withdrawn their Albanian divisions, our Greek position rendered untenable. Robert Menzies, Prime Minister of Australia.
Generalfeldmarschall Keitel überbringt die Glückwünsche des Führerhauptquartiers.
Diary, Monday, April the 21st, 1941. Yesterday, the Führer celebrated his birthday on the Balkan front. Henrietta Schneider.
Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring trifft ein. Der Reichsmarschall überbringt dem Führer die Glückwünsche der Wehrmacht.
Hitler's invasion allowed suppressed century-old darkness to rise again, in a new guise and with new motivation. No nation is free of similar phenomena. Neighbors had lived peacefully next to neighbors, and both would have continued their whole lives long, like their grandfathers. But now they're looting and wiping each other out. Milo Vangelis.
New Year's Eve 1942. A man in Dessau lights the last cigar of peace. Unlike in the First World War, thanks to the plundering of occupied territories, people in the Greater German Reich do not starve during the Second World War.
Diary, April the 24th, 1941. Some shortages in Berlin, above all tobacco and beer. I'll fix this. The people have to be kept happy. Joseph Goebbels, Gauleiter of Berlin.
Radio address on the BBC, April the 27th, 1941. The peoples of the British Empire and of the United States are determined that the cause of freedom shall not be trampled down. Last time I spoke to you, I quoted the lines of Longfellow. I have some other lines which are less well known, but which are appropriate to our fortunes tonight. And I believe they will be so judged wherever the English language spoken or the flag of freedom flies. For while the tired waves vainly breaking seem here no painful inch to gain, far back through creeks and inlets making comes silent, flooding in the main, and not by eastern windows only. When daylight comes in the light. In front, the sun climbs slow, how slowly. But westward look, the land is bright. Winston Churchill.
Diary, May the 27th, 1941. Report. I have never believed and cannot see how the British Empire can defeat Germany without the help of God or Uncle Sam. Perhaps it will take both. General Raymond E. Lee, Chief of U.S. Military Intelligence in Great Britain.
My next-door neighbour says she prays to God to strike Hitler dead. Cannot help thinking, if God wanted to do that, he would not have waited till Mrs. Helm asked him to do so. Nella Last, Barrow in Furness, Lancashire, Diary.